Do you remember the first time you voted in an election?
Oh, well, I remember that I did as soon as I was able, but I don't remember specifically. It was many moons ago, Kyle. I think in Toronto generally means I voted some kind of Liberal party at whatever level of election, because that's just what you do in Toronto. What about you?
I don't really remember the first election I was in. I know that when I actually got to be voting age, because I was in Lethbridge, it was a whole ordeal to actually get back to my small little town to cast my vote and stuff like that. It just didn't seem to be super easy to do it.
You weren't allowed to vote in Lethbridge? That's very Albertan, isn't it? Yeah.
No,
I would have taken one look at you.
It's your primary residence, which that was not technically my primary residence because I was going to school there. So it was this whole big thing.
So you have to drive back to the Rocky Mountain.
Yeah, so I just didn't want to do that. But once I got on my own here in Calgary, that was the time of the Liberal minority government. Anyways, there was like 3 elections that happened within like 18 months.
Yeah.
And so I voted in all of those ones
like
and got really good at knowing where I had to go and vote, that whole thing. But it brought to mind too, like doing that process, you feel like so grown up and you feel like you're actually doing something rather than the few times we quote unquote voted in high school and stuff like that. It's like none of this really matters.
Well, let me ask you this.
So maybe that is actually more true to real life than you might think.
Let me ask you this. How long did it take for you to get jaded in that process? Because I'm pretty sure I stopped voting for a few cycles in Toronto into my 30s. That's for sure.
I guess to answer your question, I still have this feeble glimpse that the democratic process is something that should be supported, even though, like, intellectually, it doesn't really matter. It really just doesn't matter.
It's a weird thing, stats and mass data. Like you, on my ideal side, I think that the process and thought behind democratic elections is a powerful one. But as I'm researching now into this new potential podcast idea I have, there's an interesting correlation between modern media and art and data and politics. I have a suspicion, and we'll see if this comes true, that I'm jaded for a reason. We can, in a broad, sweeping sense, but you can't as an individual.
Okay, so let's do a vote right now. Who wants Dave to stop being a Debbie Downer here? Okay.
I just want this conversation to be over.
In his own garage, Kyle has built a machine, cobbled together with parts found in his friend's church basement and a dumpster behind the local Dairy Queen. This monstrosity is now alive and evil. Kyle has convinced his friend Dave to help stop the apocalypse by reviewing films the machine picks. The ultimate purpose is still unknown, and Kyle could have probably done this himself, but he's not being dragged to hell alone. This is Kyle and Dave versus the machine.
Welcome to Kyle and Dave versus the Machine. This is the podcast, of course, where this machine is forcing me and Dave to go through currently the year 1999 and talk about movies, and it gives us an excuse to talk about almost anything except for movies. But this week, we get to talk about election.
That was a great pause. You should leave that pause in. Super awkward.
No, I needed it to cut properly.
Now to the presidential race with 3 candidates running. The first is Tracy.
One thing that's important to know about me is that I'm an only child. My mom is really devoted. She likes to write letters to successful women like Elizabeth Dole and Connie Chung and ask them what advice do they have for me, Tracy, her daughter.
The next candidate for student body president, Paul Metzler. I just don't think somebody would do something like that on purpose. I think she did it.
If you want to question me like this, I won't continue without my attorney present. I do not often.
Dave, what's your relationship with election?
The movie or the process?
Yeah.
The movie,
The movie, like, have you seen it before, knew about it? Like, what was your issue with it at all?
It's like one of those things I think I was watching and so into movies as part of my identity. I know that this movie exists. I could have described to you what the poster looked like. I knew who was in it. I have never watched this movie before.
It's definitely entered, I think, the popular culture a lot. I see memes with this movie all the time. Mostly of the Reese Witherspoon character.
I think it's not in my algorithm.
Maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. This is also somewhat big in, I would call, gay Twitter, where it gets referenced quite a bit. I also, this is like a recurring theme on this show. I know this poster like the back of my hand. Like, I saw it all the time. Definitely when it was in theaters, but definitely like browsing the aisles and like Blockbuster, that sort of thing. Like, for some reason, that image of Reese Witherspoon with her mouth open and then Matthew Broderick's face inside of her mouth is like, what is this movie? Like, I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah, I still don't. Have we watched it yet?
No, we haven't watched it yet, Dave. Come on. How do you think this thing works? Why don't we do that, though? Let's go thank some sponsors. We'll go and watch the movie, Election, and then we'll return. We'll have a big old discussion about it.
Hi there, everyone. This is just Kyle breaking into the middle of the episode once again to talk to you about our sponsors this week. Apparently, there's a court order where Dave never has to do these. You've heard me say this before, but Kyle and Dave vs. the Machine is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network powered by ATB. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. Well, this week, our episode is brought to you by Back to School Again, a podcast about midlife learners. So listen up, Dave, wherever you are. The next season dives into the power of online learning. Let's take a listen.
Hi, I'm Katrina Ingram. I'm working on a special 3-part miniseries of the Back to School Again podcast in partnership with Athabasca University, which highlights the power of online learning. We'll talk about how the internet has transformed education, the role of microlearning and micro-credentialing, and an exciting new offering called PowerEd. I've just completed the PowerEd course, Machine Learning for Competitive Advantage, and I'll share some of the cool things I've learned about how artificial intelligence is shaping our world and how to apply machine learning to solve business problems. The series launches in April, but you can subscribe now at backtoschoolagain.ca. Hope you'll join us.
You can find Back to School Again on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also find it at backtoschoolagain.ca. That's backtoschoolagain.ca. This week, we're also sponsored by PodPower. With PodPower, ATB is making it possible for us to amplify the voices of Albertans and Alberta podcasters. This episode, we're giving a PodPower shout out to The Shared Mic. The Shared Mic is Edmonton's first unscripted intergenerational podcast. The show connects two people of different ages and stages to interview each other about shared life experiences. It's hosted by Age Friendly Edmonton, a partnership between the City of Edmonton and the Edmonton Seniors Coordinating Council. Find The Shared Mic wherever you find your podcasts or at thesharedmic.blueberry.net. Blueberry, of course, is spelled in the very hipster way of BLUBRRY. Think of it as a cold blueberry. It's blueberry. Yes. Let's go with that. Again, that's thesharedmic.blueberry.net.
All right. Well, Dave, just by observing how you acted while we were watching this, separately, but we were FaceTiming with one another. We're still keeping our distance from one another. I feel like this might be the finally the podcast where we actually argue about a movie instead of agreeing about it pretty much the entire way through. So let's see. Let's see if I'm right.
Would you say that we should debate about it? Although there was no debate in the movie.
One second. Sorry. You
there we go. We're already going. I feel very tepid. I feel very lukewarm right now, Kyle. And judging by your virtual visage, you like this crap. So this will be fun.
Are you much of an Alexander Payne fan at all?
Alexander Payne? What's Alexander Payne?
Sideways, The Descendants, Nebraska.
Oh, is this the same director?
He directed this movie.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just asking if you're... Because weirdly enough, I'm actually lukewarm on most of his other movies.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
So that's why
Sideways, I don't know. I'm doing a lot of virtual audio shrugging. Yeah,
all right, well,
they're okay.
Let's get into this. Let's talk about this. I'm going to push this button here. Print out this receipt. So Election was released April 23rd, 1999. The other major releases that week, the first one was Existence.
We should have watched
starring
that.
Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Yeah, that's a gross
Jude
movie.
Law.
We should have done that one.
Written and directed by David Cronenberg. But yes, I'm a big fan of that movie, even as gross and weird as it is.
It's just like alien phallus. We should have done that. It's very sloppy. Yeah. And from what I remember, I haven't watched that movie since I first watched it.
Oh, yeah. It's been years. There was also Pushing Tin that came out this week,
that
starring John Cusack, Billy Bob Thornton, written by Glenn Charles, and directed by Mike Newell.
The airport movie.
Sure. I actually know the name. I've never seen the movie, so I actually don't know what it's about.
I feel like that's one where he's an air traffic controller, and that would have been better than this crap we just watched. I mean, sorry, that would have been better than what we just watched.
All right, well, you can take it up with the machine.
You're cute when you get angry.
Its budget was $25 million. It
What?
opened, it was $25 million to make this movie. It opened to $119,000.
Yep.
Domestically, it would go on to make $14.9 million. It did not get an international release, so it ended with 14.9 or $23 million after inflation. So this was a box office bomb, straight up box office bomb, but has become a fairly well-regarded movie in the intervening 21 years. Its plot description from IMDb is: a high school teacher's personal life becomes complicated as he works with students during the school elections, particularly with an obsessive overachiever determined to become student body president. Which is a pretty accurate description of what this movie is
it?
But I don't think it really grabs the tone very well of
Right.
what this movie
Okay, that's
does.
fair. Yeah, the whole time I was like, what?
It stars Reese Witherspoon as Tracy Flick, Matthew Broderick as Jim McAllister, Chris Klein as Paul Metzler, and Jessica Campbell as Tammy Metzler. Now, something interesting is going on. The machine was very angry after the last couple of weeks, and it finally forced me. It slapped me a couple times. I'm actually very scared being in my home alone right now.
You put hands
but-
on it, Kyle.
Yeah,
It's disgusting.
it actually is somehow like self-replicating itself, almost like Terminator style.
Ugh.
So you actually, Dave, have a printer that I sent to you via mail. Well, I still can do that because the machine wants you to also be involved in some of this trivia and information we're giving here at the beginning of the episodes. So let me talk to you first, and then you'll finish up with a couple other people. Let me tell you about Jessica Campbell. She was born October 30th, 1982, and at 10 years old, she appeared in the TV movie The Best Interest of the Children. But Election was her first feature film. She would go on to be in a couple of episodes of Freaks and Geeks, and then last appeared in the film Junk in 2002. She has left acting and last reported she was studying anthropology when she was in college. So maybe she's doing that.
Well,
I don't actually know.
Freaks and Geeks was good.
That's a great show. I was so sad when it went off the air, but I love that show.
That's the way narratives are supposed to be, Kyle.
No, I need closure. Damn it. Chris Klein, born March 14th, 1979, and 1999 was a great year for Chris Klein because this was the first movie he ever appeared in. He'd follow it up later this same year to be in American Pie.
Oh, this is the same year as American Pie.
Same year. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about the same amount of acting ability.
Sure. Hey, I'm not here to judge, except I will be afterwards. Really, the only reason he's in this film is because Alexander Payne, who grew up in Nebraska, was scouting talent in Omaha because he wanted to film there, which is where Klein was going to school, and so he was cast after he went and auditioned for it. From there, he's been a working actor ever since. He's been in most of the American Pie sequels, the awful Rollerball remake, and then We Were Soldiers, Just Friends, and of course, Street Fighter, The Legend of Chun-Li. In the mid-2010s is when Chris started being in a bunch of TV shows, probably the most notable being The Flash, where he's guested on 16 episodes. The next film you could see him in is Intensive Care. Intensive Care is a powerful and uplifting drama focusing on the... David's shaking his head. A powerful and uplifting drama focusing on the unusual relationship that develops between a fragile Southern woman whose husband is on life support and the young abused boy she kidnaps and takes on the road as their families and the cops search for them.
Oh, God.
So I'm sure you'll be first in line, Dave. I'm sure you'll be first in line.
It's going to be a great world release, that one.
Well, you push your button on your printer, you'll get the rest of what we're supposed to say here at the beginning.
This is fun. Inclusion, Kyle.
Yes.
I've been meaning to talk to you about
Inclusivity.
this. Yeah. So can I call my printer the Epson? Try to get some money from Epson. No.
Yeah, sure. It's the Epson all-in-one.
Yeah, I have this Epson all-in-one printer, Kyle, where you don't buy cartridges anymore and you save money on ink.
How does it print? How does it use ink?
Well, no, it's ink, but you buy them in latex. No, they're not probably not latex, but in plastic bags, and you squeeze the ink into the actual, I don't know, containers.
And then after you're done doing that, do you actually directly go to a dolphin and stuff it into its blowhole?
Well,
the empty package?
I mean, it's an important part of the process. I mean, that's biodiversity. That's the whole thing, interacting with the environment, Kyle.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
Come on,
Plus,
idiot. Read a book.
If you have been doing any Wikipediaing, dolphins are disgusting.
No, they are. I mean, same with seals. Seals are gross.
They're pretty awful. And there's a mammal with a star-shaped dick. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff out there. So weird stuff. Okay, so my printer told me about Matthew Broderick. Shall I read what it says here?
Yeah, just read through it.
All right. It says, born March 21st, 1962. He started acting in the early 80s. His first film was Max Duggan. Is it Duggan? Dugan?
I think it's Dugan, actually, but I don't know.
I had this intuition. I read that wrong, much like all of my reading. His first film was Max Dugan Returns, and his second film was War Games. That was fun. Oh, probably doesn't hold up.
It's a fun movie.
Does it hold up?
I actually watched it a couple of years ago. I think I rated it like a 3.5 out of 5. So it's fun. I don't think it's great, no. But then I don't have any nostalgia for it because I didn't see it when it was released.
He would then go on to be in Lady Hawk.
Do you remember Lady Hawk?
That's with Catwoman. Michelle Pfeiffer?
Yes, I believe it's Michelle Pfeiffer. And there's another famous person that I'm blanking on.
Sean Connery?
No, but maybe Rutger Hauer or something. I can't remember. There's...
Before being cast in his probably most famous role as Ferris Bueller in Ferris Bueller's Day Off in 1986. After this, he had an extensive career both in film and on stage. His films in this period would include Biloxi Blues, Torch Song Trilogy, Glory, and being the voice of Simba in The Lion King. Glory is a fantastic movie. He also appeared in the stage versions of Biloxi Blues and Torch Song Trilogy. This would culminate with The Producers, which is a huge hit, and in many ways it's credited as rejuvenating Broadway. He then would take that role alongside his co-star Nathan Lane to make a pretty forgettable movie version of it. Oh, damn. The robot's not cutting.
Wow, I mean, that's the machine talking. That's pretty brutal. I will say, breaking in here, if people don't know his work on stage, it's kind of a weird, like he was actually kind of known as a great dramatic actor and then segued into being kind of a song and dance man later on into his career. So there's a weird like shift that happened with his stage work.
Actually, I feel like listening to you say that, I'm getting Ferris Bueller and Glory. Like he's a lampoon or he's sacrificing himself for his troops with a weird mustache. The next film you might be able to see is Lazy Susan. Is it about something in a kitchen? No, it's described as a slice of life comedy about a woman on the edge with nowhere to go, but over? Is that really right? Nowhere to go, but over. Lazy
a slice of life comedy about a woman on the edge with nowhere to go, but over. That's a weird sentence. That is actually, now reading that back, that's a very weird sentence.
That's okay, robot. You understand no grammar?
That's right from IMDb, though. This is a copy and paste, I would assume, from IMDb.
Lazy Susan is a story about a spectacularly unmotivated woman for whom doing nothing is exhausting.
I think we can all appreciate that feeling right now.
Yeah.
I noticed that the machine did not include in here the fact that Matthew Broderick killed a person. But I guess we don't talk about that anymore.
No, we don't. Well, controversy is still 1999, right? It's the 2020s.
It's been 21 years, man.
We're good. Everybody's killed somebody in Hollywood. Actually, that's not an exaggeration at this point.
It's probably true.
Yeah, I'm sorry I said that.
Either directly or indirectly, somehow it has happened.
Yeah, even without the Weinstein 6 degrees of separation, everybody there is a monster.
Meryl Streep is actually responsible for at least 5 deaths. So
Meryl Streep's one of those people where, posthumously, shit's going to come out. Do
you think so?
Yeah, there's something about a woman that could be nominated for an Academy Award every year. That's suspicious. Suspect, but...
Yeah, well, I guess we'll find out.
I'm sure you're in love with her. Okay.
I do. I love Meryl Streep. I just watched Postcards from the Edge the other day. I loved it.
What about the movie from Netflix? It looks garbage.
Oh, I'm sure that one is. I'm sure that's garbage, yeah.
She'll get nominated for that one for sure. Am I continuing? Is it still my turn? Okay, continue. Reese Witherspoon. Oh, what a cop-out. It says, we've already discussed Reese in our Cruel Intentions episode, so I guess go and listen to that. Listen, machine.
Yeah.
That's some.
Hey, we need SEO. So go with us to other episodes of this podcast so it gets recommended again and again to other people.
Scroll, rate, comment, subscribe.
Yeah, just keep scrolling.
Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes.
We need you. If you're listening to this, we need you. This movie was directed by Alexander Payne. It was written by Alexander Payne and Jim Taylor, based on the book by Tom Perrotta.
Yes.
Jim Taylor was born in 1962, no word on month or day, vampire. Before election, he wrote the movie Citizen Ruth, starring Laura Dern. But let me just read his list of writing projects. He has credits on Jurassic Park 3, yikes, should have omitted that, About Schmidt, I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, as well as Downsizing. Oh my lord.
Isn't that a wild, this variety of movies that he's written? I just can't. Like, the same person who wrote this movie also wrote Jurassic Park 3, and then I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry.
You know what?
That's so weird to me.
You know what you hashtag that? Creativity, Kyle.
I guess so.
Yeah. His last screenplay was Juliet Naked in 2018. That's some old school hardcore, softcore porn stuff. Juliet Naked.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Awful. Alexander Payne was born February 10th, 1961. His first full-length film as director was The Passion of Martin from 1991, but Citizen Ruth was his only other film before election. After election, he has had great acclaim as a director for things like Sideways, About Schmidt, and Nebraska. His next project... is Nebraska the one with that old man in black and white? And he...
Yeah. It's Laura Dern's father, actually, Bruce Dern.
Bruce Dern. I was going to say Bob. I'm like, he's not a Bob. His next project, which will most likely be coming out next year, is The Menu. Described, is it kind of like Lazy Susan? Hold on a second.
Yeah, that's actually a direct sequel to Lazy Susan.
Might be a prequel, because usually I like to get The Menu before I rotate the Lazy Susan. Described as a young couple travel to a remote island to eat at an exclusive restaurant where the chef has prepared a lavish menu with some shocking surprises.
I mean, it has to be a cannibal movie, right?
It
With
has
that
to be.
description? Like, it has to be.
Or dolphins.
Well, maybe it's the dolphins.
It could be dolphins.
with your plastic bag still in its blowhole as it brings it to the table.
I do sign them, so I might get credit for that film.
Right. Oh, this is so good. David Young. What?
Well, that's what you're tasting. It's authenticity.
All right. So that's some background, I guess, from the creative forces that are in this movie. So let's pull off the Band-Aid here then, Dave. What did you think about this movie?
Yeah, I watched it.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's a ringing endorsement. I guess
I don't know how to frame this conversation. Let's start with, when it opened and it had this sort of, these are strong words, but like sort of subversive, ironic, like really almost deadpan buildup, just to show how like small town, I suppose, we were starting. And then they cut to the narration. I was thinking, oh, this might be some insightful, small scale thing about, politics in America. And then it kind of went off the rails for me there. I mean, I think the actors, with the exception of a notable lead, although for his role, Chris Klein, kind of plays Chris Klein.
When he needs to.
Right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a matter of the acting. I thought everybody did really well. I actually enjoyed moments, of Reese and of Reese and I are buds. So like of Reese, of our right. Dubs, and Matthew Broderick, I actually really like a lot because he does that spread, pun intended for this movie, between being able to look destitute and dramatic and play the fool and, do all these things. And it's still believable, although it gets cartoonish, of course.
Sure.
And then by the end, I just didn't understand why I had to watch it. I didn't get the point. There are little moments where I loved. Like I loved the fact, and I don't think you can get away with this anymore unless it's a comedic actress. Of the freeze frames of him, hating Reese Witherspoon, but they do the real freeze frame of her looking like an idiot. It's great. How many dramatic actresses would allow that to happen anymore in modern society's image heavy thing? So you get cool insights. I didn't connect to the story at all. I think trying to pick at and play with the sort of, let's call it morality and maybe desperation. I don't know if it's supposed to be a commentary on small town America. I don't identify with it in that sense. So it's just felt like desperate people in a weird, small, tight environment making really strange decisions. Everybody's got a character flaw with the exception of the naive, beautiful fool. And then the weird epilogue, I don't know. It just dragged on a bit and then it ended and I was like, what? Thanks.
You know what? There might be something that you're hitting on that is why we're having such a different reaction to this movie. You're saying how because of the small townness, you don't really understand maybe people's machinations for power almost. And that's exactly what I identified with so much. From coming from a small town, like the smallest little bit of power that someone gets goes to their head to such a degree that it's fascinating to watch, right? In a small town, it's like, well, I own the car dealership, so I'm like this big guy. Where in like a Toronto, like who the fuck cares? Like you own a car dealership. No one is going to pay you any heed really at that point. Like there's this huge difference in priorities and power levels going from small town to big city. And I thought that that's what Election did so beautifully was it's like, at the end of the day, and one of the characters flat out says this, which I think is actually kind of the thesis of the film. Tracy Flick, portrayed by Reese Witherspoon, who is going after being the head of the
world.
The world, but student body president, right? But one of the characters even states this theme, which is basically none of this matters. Like none of this matters. We're going to say something. We're going to get elected. We can't do anything anyways because really the people who hold the power at the school is the teachers and the principal. So I remember being in student assemblies and people coming on, we want to be president and you had to go and vote. And I thought the same thing back then. It's like, well, you can't do anything. It's like, I'm going to, change the school. You're not, but okay, I guess we can play this game that you're going to. It just looks good on your resume so that you can go to Washington and get a job and say that, hey, I was the student body president, to pad your career to like keep the whole thing going. Because what you're doing there doesn't really matter either because there's other people pulling the strings anyways. So it's just a smaller scale look at that whole relationship.
Who's cynical now, Kyle? Yeah,
I guess so.
All your opening optimism about elections and having this empowerment, but when you describe the experience of the small town culture,
yeah. I guess the other thing, and I 100% understand that this is my own baggage that I'm bringing to this, but I don't know how else you can talk about films without bringing your own background into it and your own feelings to it. I got into this YouTube rabbit hole this week, and I encourage anyone to do this. Go and watch old reviews from Siskel and Ebert, because it's really fun to watch them talk about films and stuff like that and be like, oh, you called that one 100%. So I'm like, ooh, I don't know if you have I don't know if that still holds up, that opinion. What I got into specifically, which is kind of election adjacent, is that there was this special episode where Roger Ebert invited on Martin Scorsese to talk about the best films of the 90s.
Okay. When was this? This is...
it was probably like late 1999 or early 2000 probably is when they did the episode.
Recent. Okay.
Well, fairly recent, 20 years ago.
Well, for this, but we're in a time capsule.
Oh, I got you.
Not really, actually, but yeah.
They were talking about their favorite films, and Martin Scorsese was, they were actually talking about the movie Fargo. Kind of a similar thing. It's like small town. Someone thinks they have more power than they really do. And it's like that plucky little police officer who figures it out and saves the day, right? And that was on both of their lists, how much they loved it. And they were talking about how it's like, you probably couldn't make this movie because there's almost this like ironic subversion that the Coen brothers are doing in that. And Scorsese agrees, like, you're right, I can't do this type of movie. I love this movie, but I could not do this because what I'm much more interested in is the actual, like, the human being level. Like, I want to know the human beings, whether they're awful or great or in between. I want to focus on just the person, which I think is why Scorsese doesn't really care about plot a lot of times in his movies. Like, I wouldn't say his movies are very plot heavy. They're character driven, the entire thing. It's like I'm watching a character do stuff.
And he stays in a specific world that he understands, right? Like, all his movies are in this bubble.
That's right.
They're amazing.
And I find that this movie is like a smaller scale version of that, almost an amalgamation of both of those. This is absolutely a satire. It's having larger than life characters a little bit, like they're playing it up a little bit, but it is looking at these characters who are like fallible, who are like shades of gray, where you see this guy tumble from being like super respected teacher and like losing his job. You see the underpinning of this girl who's like, yeah, this like teacher's pet is like having an affair with a teacher, gets him fired, and is very calculated and conniving really underneath it all. So you're seeing kind of like the masks people put on, but also the reality of them behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think that's the part, and maybe I tend to fall more on the Scorsese philosophy, which is when I watch a movie, at least historic, I mean, we won't really talk about The Irishman too much, but that Scorsese approach where I also want to watch a movie of this nature, even in satire or comedy, and feel, unless it's like I love lowball shit, like where I don't have to, like I can just lie and like lie down and laugh.
Yeah, you're Hot Rod, right?
Hot Rod. Well, no, Hot Rod's deep. I mean, there are a lot of layers there.
When
Cool
he
beans?
said cool beans, I was like, yeah.
It's meta, dude. This one, I think maybe it's a 90s thing. I don't know. We'll learn, I suppose, particularly after this year, but if we ever have to delve into another 90s era, but there's punch pulling, right? I mean, they bring up a nefarious affair. This teacher who is clearly portrayed as having direct intent of taking advantage of this girl, at least in the recounting of the tale. And again, one of the dimensions of this is, there are perspectives because we're getting stories from specific people that, he loses his wife. He's disavowed in the Mission Impossible terms. He's got a great cry face. So there's a great scene in the principal's office. And I was like, great. And then just disappears. I know the impact in some sense drives like the conniving nature of her and eventually, spoiler alert, the Achilles heel or the penis of Matthew Broderick, his character. But that is not something even in 99 that a teacher just get to move away from. Right?
No, true.
That's prison. And the impact would go far beyond him leaving. That girl would not be able to return to high school and still run for school president. I mean, it's a bit of a skipping.
Yeah, well, I think the idea here, I agree with that point. It's like, if that came to light, like, there's no way that guy leaves that town.
No.
Like, he is being arrested. He's going to jail, 100%. Girl's reputation would be ruined. But I think the subtext is that didn't ever come out. She got her mother to, like, either pay people off or keep it hush-hush, because it's only Matthew Broderick who actually knows about that.
And the
so he tries to
principal.
blackmail, and the principal. So it's Matthew Broderick who's trying to blackmail her at that one point, and she kind of like pushes back a little bit.
Yeah. Those are like little things for me that, and maybe, again, I'm certainly biased in everything that I do.
I'm biased against all humans.
As those small plot points started to unfold, like throwing the little sister's introduction as this awkward lesbian coming out moment with this teen drama thing. When it's introduced, it's a little jarring because you're not expecting it, because it's a strange way to kind of just throw a new character at you. But then it feels like there's an opportunity for, and they try in some measure to talk about, sexuality and this reflection in that social sphere. But then it just becomes jilted friend, idealistic girl, manipulative, gets what she wants in the end, smoking a joint, having sex with a girl and living her life. It's just weird. It's like, it felt soft to me. I do like her rant, and I understand how the pieces were supposed to play together.
Know what I'm finding with rewatching, or in many cases watching for the first time, these movies from 1999, is that there was actually a lot more gay content in movies than I knew that there was. Yeah,
it's surprising. I bet if we could actually time travel, I mean, you would have been younger, but if we could time travel as people our age now back to 99, I bet it wasn't even that understated. I think just the context of how we talk about it now has become too sensitive. I mean, I use the word too, so that might upset people, but we're looking to be offended now. But the 90s were a pretty liberal time. I mean, the rave culture, Blur got big 94, 92, because the UK rave scene was blurring lines already. And so, girls and boys or boys and girls. I mean, that song's old as fuck, man. Like, these are not groundbreaking things. I think it's just American cinema and American culture has a problem.
I think that's
that
most of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's been in almost every movie we've watched.
I know, that's what I mean. It's like, boy, there's a lot more gay content than I thought there was in late 90s movies.
Maybe it's not impactful because they're pulling punches. I mean, it's a passing, they're all passing contexts. And we now are like, oh, there's an opportunity here to like develop that into something that could have followed the same narrative. But, in the Scorsese description, like, how do we get closer? Finding out she's adopted. I mean, that's a huge bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I know, and this is dropped, right?
And then you're like, oh, I know. I was like, that could have been
I
such an
think that-
important piece of the rebellion.
Something that was in the back of my mind too is that if this was a book that they were adapting today, like let's say Election, the movie had never happened and they wanted to adapt it today, this would be that Netflix like limited series, or they try to make
Stretch
5
it out.
seasons out of this and
Yeah,
stretch it out a little bit, just to delve into all these little side things that only get like very passing mentions throughout the narrative.
Like, have you like, you like this movie? Have you looked at the book?
Not at all. No, I've
okay.
not looked at the book at all. So I don't know how well regarded the book actually even is.
I mean, adaptations in general have to cut, especially for
Concede
American
some
movies.
things,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right.
And there's another aspect to this, and this is going to get you so mad. I know this is going to get you so mad because oftentimes I feel I bring this stuff up, and the response is that it's like, movies are a vacuum. You can't bring in these outside perspectives. But I feel that there is this really fascinating meta narrative that's going on in this movie at the same time. And I actually looked it up, and I'm not the only person who thought. There was like critics even at the time who actually mentioned this. So like, I'm not. This is not an original
Defensive. Okay, yeah, throw it.
Matthew Broderick's most famous film is Ferris Bueller's Day Off, where he plays this like kid who like skips school, doesn't care about anything, is flipping and stuff.
Yeah.
And this is flipped on its head, where he's like now the person that he was trying to go against in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And I feel like there's this interesting push and pull that they're actually even playing with in this movie, because there's even a scene straight out of it where he runs and then stops right at the door and then walks in, right? Like, I think they're intentionally bringing that idea of like, hey, remember how he was back in Ferris Bueller? This is what he's like now. And kind of the subtext of being like, this is how these characters are in high school, but they're probably going to be very different when they advance like 15 years in the future. So I think there's a little bit of play going on here at the same time, that people are more complicated than what their younger selves seem to be.
I can see why people would say that. I think it's bullshit. Only because, I don't remember what city, but Ferris Bueller's Chicago? I mean,
I think it's Chicago.
Yeah, the context of the character is totally different. I think what might drive that is this thing I was feeling while I was watching is, I don't know if Matthew Broderick actually has that much depth of an actor as people want to give him credit for. And I feel like whenever I see him now in the different stages of his career, he is kind of the same character in all of his movies. I also feel like there might be just not a direct line with the Ferris as a child, and then sort of the doldrums of being a middle class American adult. But that might just be a reflection in general of the cultural diaspora, like just the writer. I don't know how old he would have been, 61. Yeah, so he's in his like late 30s or something. It might just be coming there too, where, I mean, if you're a Hollywood writer, I'm pretty sure unless you're at the top, 1% game, you're grinding, right?
Yeah.
And there's going to be this feeling like, as particularly in art forms and creative forms, where I know I struggle with this. For me, being not business-minded and not sort of a sane individual, the thought of doing rote, structured commercial work is like emotionally difficult for me, which is why I'll never succeed at in that level. And I think for even creative people that live and love the commercial world, that's a bitter pill, right? Like to paint a picture and then have someone tell you how to paint it. Those are two fundamentally different things. So becoming a teacher, and, he starts off, he's like, I just want to raise the generation next and bring the future leaders. And then he's kind of like doing the exact same fucking speach every day.
Year,
and they
doing
show
the same
the
thing
loop
at the blackboard. Yeah.
And so those are like little elements that I actually really liked. And I'm like, yeah, this is a great place to start a character to break.
So this is my minor criticism of the movie, is that whereas I think everything for me works when it's revolving around him and Tracy and the school and the actual election of the movie Election, what doesn't necessarily work for me on the same level, at least, is his affair that he starts with his, like, the friend who is cheating on Tracy. I mean, I know that in the back of his mind, he's kind of blaming her for getting his best friend fired. I don't understand the jump from him going to like have an affair with that man's wife, or ex-wife, I guess, in this case. And I know that sometimes affairs are not necessarily like super planned out. They're a matter of like, they just kind of happen. But I didn't feel like there was enough given to me to understand, like, so why? Because it seems like he likes his wife. No. I know that there's a little bit of distance going on there. Even he's not like sharing a lot of stuff or not talking, but like what forces him to go down the affair route. And I don't know if I ever really got a great answer for it.
I agree with you that, yeah, it's awkward. They don't work on it enough. I disagree only that I think it's intentionally depicted, whether correctly or not, that him and his wife actually don't have a good relationship. I mean, they do their best to show her exceptionally plain, downtrodden, unbeautified in the Hollywood sense. And I can't remember who she is, but she's a film actress. She's not like a B-roll lady they just brought in as a filler. She's actually been in a few movies. She can beauty up, and I think it's intentional for her to look, small towny with the frazzled hair. Whether it's enough, like you said, I don't think so. And it gets, all those points, like the sudden acceleration into the affair with the teacher and Reese Witherspoon, the sudden, the pornographic basement dwelling thing. Like, there's so many awkward moments that are couched in reality and real people's experiences, but are not played out strongly in the movie where I'm like, this is, of course this would happen,
Right.
I can't wait, or like, what's going to happen next? He's really going to go off the end now. It's more like, oh shit, like that's like, come on, man. And then the next thing happens, oh, like, really? You're gonna, like, and there's just a lot of questioning in my mind about.
I guess that's one of those things too. It seems like we've been saying this a lot here recently on some of the movies we've been watching, which is, I don't really think that anyone comes off particularly good looking in this film, meaning like their actions, their morality. And perhaps maybe that is a 2020 Kyle saying that. I don't know if I would have necessarily felt the same way in 1999. Maybe I would have been like, Matthew Broderick was totally justified doing what he was doing. Maybe I would have felt that. I don't know if I would, but I think that there is these shades. I think we're seeing, to bring in socio-political things again, I think we're seeing like this like crumbling of like the quote unquote like the exceptionalism of America, right? Where it's like white picket fences, you make your living, everything's cool, America's great. And this is showing like, actually there's all this stuff that's happening here that people are really struggling with, which is like doing the same thing day in and day out, not feeling like they matter, affairs, backstabbing, political machinations, all this stuff is actually happening. And this whole idea of what America is not what we've been sold here for the last like 70 years.
This is the other thing about pulling punches. I feel like I agree with you. I think it's intentional that none of the main characters are meant to be heroes, but they throw in the rube. I think it's a desperate sort of lifesaver in this Christian morality sense. I mean, I agree on a spiritual, like with all of my spiritual sort of new learnings that, particularly in the part where they're all praying, I thought that was a great moment that was misplayed because it's I just wasn't invested in the drama at that point. But you have everybody praying for themselves except for the fool, and he's not projected as like a varsity blues jock, right? He's not this guy who's taking advantage of women, whatever. He's like literally this, right? Almost like this Jesus-like character. He's just passing through. He loves everyone. He's humble. Like, he's a little stupid, and then that's it. And then he gets it, and then he doesn't get it. It's weird. And I think that if they had gotten rid of that and they had added a little grit to him, then you'd get this political commentary about small town living, for example, or America's a culture. But throwing that in there made it very cheap because I don't know. I didn't understand why.
Yeah, I can agree. This, before it passes too far by, I just want to make a very small point. That was actually one of my favorite, like, filmic tricks of them, like, panning up out of their bedrooms, each three of them doing their praying. I thought that was a really great shot. I think you're right, though, because I think the problem with Chris Klein's character, yes, I'm going to agree with you. He's not the best actor in the world, never has been. I think the biggest thing is, like, you can see the two big polar opposites of the two women who are running, right? So you have the Reese Witherspoon character who is like very politically motivated, knows exactly what she's doing, is trying to play the crowd as much as possible and trying to do like all the right things. And then you have Jessica Campbell, who is like, hellfire, brimstone, I'm going to speak the truth to the man, that type of thing. And then you have Chris Klein, who, like, I don't even know what type of thing he's trying to portray, because a dummy I don't think actually really excels in politics. They either have to be like super great at speaking, they have to be able to draw a crowd, you have to convince people to vote for you. I don't think he actually does anything to have people vote for him. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading way too much into that, but it's like, as far as like the political classes, I didn't feel like he actually fit into anyone that
Right.
made sense.
I mean, it's a comedic moment when he reads his pre-written speech. I felt it was implied that that Matthew Broderick wrote it for him, and so
Or
when
his like the girlfriend character. Yeah.
And so when he reads it and he doesn't realize the punctuation, and so it's intentionally, I think, supposed to show that he has no qualifications whatsoever except for his popularity
And no philosophy, right? He's not
Right.
actually,
right.
there's nothing that's actually driving him to run.
And if we want to read too much into this, you could make perhaps a discussion around whether Tracy and Trixie, what are the two? Anyways, Reese Witherspoon and the sister, that they're kind of opposite sides of the same coin. They're both lying to get what they want ultimately. Just one wants the power of public acknowledgement, and one wants the power to control her life to go where she wants to go, which is into, presume a repressed Catholic school lesbian fantasy, like male written lesbian fantasy bullshit.
Sure.
And so I don't know. It's again, these are all things that I think I can understand why some people would like it, and I do respect parts of it that were made, but the overall experience for me felt so outdated, antiquated, and like half fulfilled.
So I guess that answers the next question about how you don't think there's not much cultural relevance to this movie anymore.
I mean, maybe contextually, if small town living can still reflect on, like, and we talked about this in Varsity Blues, and like the idea of the one truck town. Like if you've got 5,000 people or less, and there's 2 high schools, or I don't know. I can't contextualize what living like that is now. But even the idea of high school politics, I think, must have evolved so much. Politics itself is such a fucking nightmare. Over the last 20 years, it's become this cesspool of nothing. I mean, it has no real value anymore. My presumption is like in the 21 Jump Street comedy, or 22, where they've destroyed these high school norms of categories. I have a suspicion that politics and things of that nature, the experience of a teenager, has gone that way. It's become too ambiguous, and I think these tropes don't play at all. That's my feeling as a wise, nearly 42-year-old seeker of knowledge, Kyle, as I traverse the world and pull in so much information and wisdom.
I think I'm going to vomit in my non-existent mouth.
All right. Well, the machine here has said that they're about to throw up, so we have to wrap it up here.
I do smell something burning, but yeah, keep going.
Right. Let's move on into some trivia. So I'm going to push my button here. Print this out. So this is me being like Debbie Downer here, but I do want to make the point. This movie came out the exact same week that Columbine happened. So that was kind of what was going on in the world at this point. So maybe people, as far as like its bad take at the box office, I actually have a feeling it just had bad marketing, but there might be something to be said. Like, I don't really want to go and see a movie set in a high school right now. I want to go and do anything else but that.
I think it didn't do well because it's a small town political satire. It's probably poorly marketed because this thing, I mean, I was surprised actually by the budget. I would have assumed it was a lot less than what the machine said it was. And then, it's 1999. Does Ferris still have a pull? Reese is not Reese Witherspoon of, I don't know if she's still got pull in general. She had her, great era after this. And then there's nobody else in this movie from a star power marketing perspective that's going to make you think that this is going to be a hit.
Well, yeah, but this is very early in her career, and I think it's much past like Matthew Broderick being a box office pull. So yeah, I think you're probably right.
And she's great in it. Like, not to hate on our dubs. Like I love that she's in it. I love like I said, the fact that, whether she had a choice or this is part of her making the game, but yeah, ugly face freeze frames, and she plays that sadist reasonably well, and with the build up. Like, again, the acting was never a problem for me. I just don't care about this movie. Yeah.
Well, let me tell you about this thing. Apples are featured prominently in this movie, usually before trouble arrives for a character. They are used as an analogy to entice Paul Metzler to enter the election. An apple tree is shown before Mr. McAllister is stung by a bee. Apples hang above the doorway to Mr. McAllister's living room right before he discovers his wife knows he cheated on her. And Mr. McAllister wins the Apple Teacher of the Year award at the beginning of the movie. So it's basically like oranges in The Godfather, Dave.
Awful. No, well, all I can think about is corny biblical. Again, and this is the thing about the position of the writing of this thing, and you know my bias on the puritanical roots of morality in America. I mean, like really, you know, original sin. The movie's about like having sex too much and the corruption of, you know, egos. It's like, I don't know. It's cheap, Kyle.
Right.
It's cheap.
I don't know about that, but since the movie was shot in a real high school, adjacent classrooms had real class going on while some scenes for the movie were being done. So in the soundtrack, some background noises come from real teachers and students. And director Alexander Payne decided to leave that in as to give the movie a more realistic sound. I think you have a couple of trivia items.
Oops, just printing up some more here. And wow, I'm saving so much ink here, Kyle. I wonder if Epson will send us some money for that great product plug.
The great Epson printer.
It says here that each of the 3 candidates have a fake Tiffany lamp on their bedside tables.
I don't even know what a Tiffany lamp would look like.
Yeah, who gives a shit? Is it really? That's a piece of trivia, eh?
That's a piece of trivia.
Thank you, robot. President Barack Obama has said that this is his favorite political movie. No, I refuse to believe that. Yeah. That's Trump. That's Trump's subversion of history.
No,
yeah,
the machine printed it out. How could it be wrong? How could it be wrong?
If you want, we can do an episode about machines and morality. But I can't fathom how that sentence could have been structured. Obama seems to me like an intelligent person.
Well, I guess you're going to go fisticuffs with him here at any
Kick
time.
my ass.
Okay, so I guess it's time now to rate this movie here, Dave. Of course, anyone can go and take a list at our entire ratings at Letterboxd, letterboxd.com/KDVSTM, which just so happens is also what our handle is on both Instagram and Twitter, KDVSTM, Kyle Dave versus The Machine.
I think, just quickly, Kyle, I think you said anyone can take a list at our Letterboxd.
Anyone can take a look at our Letterboxd. There, I can edit that into post. Okay, Dave, I'm very curious. What would you rate this film?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know me and these numbers. It's hard.
I know. Out of 5, of course. Out of 5.
Yeah. I think I'm going to put a 2 on it. Yeah, 2. I'm going to be vindictive. I'm going to give it a 2. Yeah.
I guess you are. So, Election is now absolutely the most divisive movie that you and I have ever done, because I am giving it a 4.5.
Jesus.
I liked it that much. I really, really like this movie. But I can't fight with math, unfortunately. It's the one thing I haven't been able to defeat. So with our average, that goes to 3.25, which actually we will be rounding down. So that's going to be actually a 3 that we're going to be giving it, which gives it currently into our 8th position on our list. But that'll just be probably pushed down here as we go along.
As a final poke, Kyle, I think for a movie you're rating 4.5, you should have done a better job defending it.
Whoa, throw down the gauntlet over here. I think for a movie that's 2, you shouldn't have said anything nice about it. So there we go.
Well, that's true. I could have gone to a 0, but no,
Half a star. Half a star.
We have watched worse movies, so yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's see what we are going to be reviewing next week. Oh, boy. Well, Dave, I think we're probably going to be back to being aligned next week. Just my gut feeling. Next week, we get to talk about Idle Hands.
Oh, God.
The Devon Sawa starring vehicle, Idle Hands.
Is that honestly, is that the movie where a hand is there like a cousin it? Or like, what do you call it? Is there a dismembered hand?
I obviously have not seen this film yet, but yes.
Oh, God.
Yes, it is.
And Kyle, I know the robot will be viewing this for us, but am I going to have to pay for this movie?
There might be a way that I can possibly help you out with that, but
Devon Sawa.
I don't know.
There's a reason. Yeah, Idle Hands, man.
Well, let's raise our hands. Who wants to watch Idle Hands next week?
Excuse me. If this is for the fate of the world, I'm willing to lose my eyesight for it. So let's get this done.